Okay, so we've established what a production possibility frontier shows. What it shows is it shows the maximum possible output of, say, two goods that an economy can make with its existing resources at existing factor productivity. In other words, with what we've got, a PPF shows the limit to what is possible to produce. But the question that occurs is, well, what if that changes? So what I want to look at in this second bit is how can we use the concept of the production possibility frontier to illustrate some of the things that we were talking about earlier. So one obvious use of a production possibility frontier then is to say, well, what happens if there was an increase in the amount of a factory production? An example that you'll often see is the idea of an economy where we've got, say, capital goods up here. Capital goods, if you remember, are goods that can be used to make something else like machinery, and, say, consumer goods down here. And imagine you've got two economies that make different choices as to the amount of consumer and capital goods that they want. Economy A, up here, what they're going for is they're going for large-scale capital goods production. So they've got, say, 150 capital goods, but 60 consumer goods. Down here, we have an economy such as B, which is more consumer-oriented. And they have a far greater number of consumer goods, but correspondingly, because of the concept of opportunity cost, they have fewer capital goods. So, what's going to happen over time? Over time, both of these economies are likely to grow. They're both investing in capital goods. And so therefore, we might say that sometime from now, economy B might be able to produce at that level there. It can produce both more capital goods and more consumer goods. It's going to operate somewhere on that production possibility frontier. But what about economy A? Economy A in the short run has sacrificed consumer goods. It's only got 60 consumer goods, whereas economy B had 120. But in exchange, it got itself far more capital goods. And consequently, in the longer run, what we should expect to see is that economy A is able to produce more of both. So some years from now, economy A may well be at, say, A-A-, whereas economy B is at B-B-. And so this is the idea of potential growth. The idea that economy A is now able, possibly, to produce both more consumer and capital goods, certainly than it could before, and perhaps more than economy B. Of course, a lot will depend on how efficient its investment in capital goods is. So the history of the Soviet Union and so on might suggest that a complete focus on capital goods isn't necessarily completely effective. But that's one thing that we can show then with production possibility frontiers. The idea that we said before, a point such as C would originally have been impossible to reach on the original production possibility frontier. But if the economy can invest in more factory production, or perhaps there's population growth, or like the Netherlands, it extends into the sea and reclaims the land, or whatever it turns out to be. Generally, later in the course you'll see this as supply-side policies. Policies to improve the quantity and the quality and the efficiency of use of our factory production. If we can do that, then greater levels of output eventually will be possible. Sometimes though you'll see an innovation that affects only one sector. An example of this might be something like genetically modified rice or something along those lines. If you imagine an economy that, on the one hand can produce agriculture, on the other hand can produce industry again, so its limits might be, say, A, B, something like that. It can produce A, industrial goods, or B, agricultural goods, or some combination in between. If we're talking about the invention of something like GM rice or growth hormones in beef or something, then obviously an economy as A is not really going to benefit because it's not producing any agricultural goods at all, and the impact of genetically modified rice on industry is of course nil. It makes no difference at all. An economy operating down here as a point like B obviously is going to be affected much more significantly because all of its resources are in agriculture. So some sort of innovation that's affecting the agricultural sector will have a far greater effect. And therefore what we end up with is a new production possibility frontier that's shifted out like that. We can now have AB dash. And the greater the extent to which an economy is producing agricultural goods in the first place, the greater the impact is. So that's something where productivity in one sector is affected rather than another. And what we can say is that the production possibility frontier effectively pivots, moves out. An economy that is purely industrial is unaffected. An economy that's agriculturally based is far more affected. What that leads on to is the idea of representing an economy where perhaps resources aren't used so well, or not where they're not used so well, but where something bad happens. If you think about some of the natural disasters that have befallen the world, Hurricane Katrina in the United States, and the earthquakes in Shenzhen and also in Japan, then the question is, well, what would that mean about an economy's ability to produce? Looking at Japan, which is contemporary at the moment, their ability to produce goods and services has clearly been dramatically impacted. The internal infrastructure has been devastated. Parts of the country are irradiated. The result is that whatever goods we're talking about, whether it's say X, whatever that is, industrial goods, for example, Y, seem to have put my axes the wrong way around. But fundamentally, Japan will be less able to produce goods than it was before. So it's not simply that some of its resources are unemployed, like we showed before. In the earlier video, we talked about an economy at point A, which had unemployed resources. This economy is operating inside its production possibility frontier. It could produce more, but it isn't. In this case, resources have actually been destroyed. There is a decrease. In this case, in the quantity of the economy's factors of production. The same sort of thing can happen in a less dramatic way if an economy fails to invest. And if it fails to invest, then gradually the stock of its capital goods will diminish. But this is very rare. Most economies grow each year, their potential grows each year. In the UK, kind of trend growth is about 2 to 3%. So it's a very unusual situation, and generally it's some sort of dramatic natural disaster or other similar event that could cause that to happen. One other bit that confuses students then is why it is that we don't draw production possibility frontiers as a straight line. And perhaps the best way of illustrating this is through an example. And I suppose we've got an economy that can produce either agricultural goods on the one hand, or it can produce industry on the other. And I suppose that to start with, it's not producing any agricultural goods at all. So people are very hungry. They're all starving to death. The peasants are revolting. It's not so good. So let's suppose that this economy decides that eating is good, and what it's going to do is to transfer some of its resources out of industry and into agriculture. So let's suppose it puts a quarter of its land and other factors of production across into agriculture. Well, of course, which land will it use? It's going to use the very best land. The reality is that factors of production are not perfectly substitutable. Some factors of production are better in one industry and some in another. And the most obvious example of that is land. Some land is very good for growing things on and some isn't. So if you were transferring resources away from industry, the resources that you would first use would be the very best, the very fertile land on river plains and deltas, well not deltas perhaps, but on the floodplains where, where the land is high quality. And the result is we give up a quarter of our industrial goods and we get lots of agricultural goods. Yeah, we get, say, 100 for the sake of argument, yeah. But I suppose that's not enough. Yeah, we're still not feeding our population. What this economy might do is it might say, well, okay, let's transfer another quarter of our resources across from industry into agriculture. Well, of course, the land we're now using isn't the very best land. It's not the most fertile land. It's good, but it's not as good as the land we've already used. And as a result, instead of producing 100 extra agricultural goods, maybe we only get another 50. If we keep going, the next quarter of our land, it's pretty marginal land, yeah, scrubby land, it's not particularly great for growing things on. So, correspondingly, again, we find that we don't get the same increase in agricultural goods as we did before. Perhaps we go to 175, we get another 25. Yeah? Still a quarter of our resources being put across each time. And if we keep going, obviously the situation starts getting ludicrous. We put over the last quarter of our land, and what we're now doing is we're growing rice on the tops of mountains, at the seaside. Yeah, there's very, very limited effect. We give up a quarter of our agricultural goods, and maybe we get another 5 agricultural goods, yeah? So when we look at what that picture represents, yeah, what we can see is that each time we give up a quarter of our industrial goods, we're getting fewer and fewer agricultural goods. Effectively, each unit of agricultural goods is requiring us to give up per unit more and more industry. Yeah? There, for 100 units of agriculture, we give up a quarter of our industry, but in here, in exchange for a quarter of our industry, we only get 5 agricultural goods. So, whereas if resources were really perfectly substitutable, if they were totally substitutable, if we could switch them easily from one sector to another, then under those circumstances there would be no problem. Yeah, if all land was the same, and all workers were the same, and all equipment was the same, and so on, then yeah, we would get a completely straight trade-off. There's one